There's an old aphorism in baseball that the 162-game season, the longest of any sport, is a marathon, not a sprint. It's one of the reasons that people were shouting, "Don't panic," from the rooftops of Yankees universe when the Yankees got off to a 5-11 start. But that aphorism is no longer true. The Yankees currently hold a playoff spot with 6 games left. There's so many different scenarios depending on which teams win or lose in which games that I'm not even going to try to lay it all out for you. But I will set aside the simplest solution, and I guarantee the solution that the Yankees are most focused on. If they win their games, they control their own destiny. It's as simple as that. Win every single night, and you host a playoff game in the Bronx for the first time since 2019. Now, is it realistic to win every single game from here on out? Probably not. That would mean a 12-game win streak after you've already had a 13-game win streak, and then that would make the wild card game a chance for a second 13-game win streak in the same season. That just seems unlikely to me statistically. But if they win their games, they control their own destiny. The Red Sox series was huge for a number of reasons. Not only do you sweep the team ahead of you and pass them in the standings, but you also send a message loud and clear that you can win in their ballpark when the chips are on the table. Giancarlo Stanton obviously stepped up and was the hero of the series. 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, the home runs coming in big spots. His grand slam was a swing that will go down for the ages if the Yankees end up making a significant playoff run here. That was a game changer, a series changer, possibly a season changer. But there were some other big hits in the series. Judge, DJ LeMahieu. You had great at-bats from Gleyber Torres and Brett Gardner and Anthony Rizzo. The pitching stepped up. Jordan Montgomery was solid. Nestor Cortez, though he didn't go deep into the game, and we'll get more into that in a little bit, he was solid. And Garrett Cole put up a performance that was better than his stat line would suggest. The bullpen was huge. Clay Holmes appears to have taken over a vital spot in that bullpen, and he's got that certain something that will help him excel in big spots. At least it appears that way. We'll find out for sure when the playoffs roll around. Luis Severino being in the mix has changed the entire makeup of the bullpen. Chad Green got some rest, and he appears to be coming around. And even Aroldis Chapman appears to have regained much of the command of his pitches, which should help him out a little bit down the stretch here. The first leg of the gauntlet is over, and the Yankees did what they had to do. But as is often the case with baseball, there's a new challenge immediately on the horizon. The Toronto Blue Jays have given the Yankees fits all season long. It's been hard to watch at times. And the Yankees are going to Toronto for the first time all season to play in front of the Blue Jays' hometown fans. What kind of energy will that give Toronto? The Jays trailed the Yankees by 2 games in the wild card, so from their perspective, these are absolutely must-win games. It's do-or-die time for the Jays. And they're going to run out Jose Barrios, however you want to pronounce it. I may have put the emphasis on the wrong syllable there. And Robbie Ray in the first 2 games of the series. So that's going to be a good test for how the Yankees respond to tough pitching in big spots. It's the oddest thing. The Yankees seem to be able to win when they have to against good teams. Going back to when they played the White Sox during the midst of their struggles earlier this year, and Jordan Montgomery outdueled Carlos Rodon. But then they mail it in against the likes of the Indians or the Orioles. To me, that comes down to management and not taking the right energy into those games, but we can address that after the season. In my opinion, there's a few guys you absolutely cannot let beat you in this series. First of all, there's the obvious MVP candidate, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who lost all of that weight during the offseason, and it's definitely benefited him. He's within striking distance of 50 home runs, and a big 3-game set against the Yankees could help swing some of those MVP votes in his favor. I still think Ohtani wins it, but Guerrero has a shot. He's put himself in the conversation. Bo Bichette is another guy you just cannot let beat you. He has absolutely killed the Yankees all season long. He takes an enormous cut, and when he makes contact, he does damage. Much like Giancarlo Stanton, when he hits it, it stays hit. If he comes up in a big spot, you've got first base open, just put up 4 fingers. You cannot let this dominance of the Yankees continue. You must stop it right now. Marcus Semien, who's having an unbelievable year, has also demolished the Yankees this season. Seems like somehow he hits a home run or 2 in every single game between these two teams. I know that's not statistically accurate, but without having these stats in front of me, I can only quote Eminem here. I can't tell you what it really is. I can only tell you what it feels like. And then, of course, you've got Robbie Ray, who, given Garrett Cole's recent hiccups, is now the likely Cy Young winner in the American League. How nice would it be to drop 8 or 9 earned runs on Robbie Ray in an inning and a third or something like that? I know it won't happen, but a guy can dream. People have asked me how I would align my playoff rotation. And it really all comes down to when you have to use Garrett Cole. If you have to use him in a potential game 162, that obviously changes things because then you can't use him in the wild card game. But I think the way it lines up right now, he's obviously your pick to go in the wild card game, which allows you to sort of think about what would happen if you win that game and you have to go play a 5-game set against the Tampa Bay Rays with the first 2 games on the road. How would you line up that rotation? Well, the first thing I would do is go to Nestor Cortes in game 1 of that series with the thought, and I typically don't like to piggyback starters, with the thought that Cortes can usually give you about 4 really good innings before he starts to stumble and get into a little bit of trouble. I would go 4 good innings with Cortes if he can give it to you, and then turn it over to Luis Severino. The Rays have not seen Luis Severino this year. He's looked really good out of the bullpen, and his stuff has been just a tick down velocity-wise from what we've seen, but his changeup and his slider have been terrific. He's had good command, and I think that going to Severino after Cortes allows you to go through 6 pretty good innings, maybe even a 7th inning if he can give you 3 out of the bullpen. And then you use Severino strategically later in the series, possibly a game 4 or a game 5 out of the pen. Next up would be Jordan Montgomery in game 2 on the road. I feel like Jordan Montgomery bends a lot, but he doesn't break. You know, he'll pitch into and out of trouble, much like Andy Pettitte did. I know that you guys are tired of hearing it, but Andy Pettitte's one of my favorite pitchers of all time, and Jordan Montgomery reminds me a lot of Andy Pettitte. The man just comes up big. He's very consistent. And it's worth noting that he keeps the ball in the ballpark very well. So I think in game 2, in order to keep the Rays in the ballpark, and the Rays are pretty good at hitting the ball out of the ballpark, I think you go Jordan Montgomery for, 4 to 5 innings. Again, you don't need to stretch him out 6 or 7 innings in the playoffs. Let him give you 4 really good innings. And then you go to Clay Holmes or Mike King to throw that sinker. And those guys should be pretty good at keeping the ball in the ballpark. And down there in Tampa, where you have that kind of artificial surface, you should get some true hops. Now, it might be a little bit quicker, so you might have to scoot your infielders back a little bit. But Clay Holmes and Mike King throwing ground balls on that turf should lead to some pretty easy bounces for our infielders. Now, depending on where you are in the series and how many off days you have in the series, you could either go Garrett Cole on 3 days rest in Game 3 at Yankee Stadium, or you can go to your next man up, as it were, which would be either Corey Kluber or Jameson Taillon, whoever you feel more comfortable with starting the game and the other guy coming in relief. I would personally go Corey Kluber to start, because if he gets on a roll, he's a guy who can give you 6 innings. And you might not need to pull him right away, but you don't know how he's going to perform out of the bullpen. You don't know how Taillon's going to perform out of the bullpen. But right now I'm leaning towards Corey Kluber to give you 3 to 4 innings and then go to Taillon or Domingo Germán possibly for a couple of innings out of the bullpen. It's going to depend on what we see out of Corey Kluber, Jameson Taillon, and Domingo Germán over the next 6 days. So that's going to be an interesting spot to watch. And then if you don't start Garrett Cole in that game, obviously you reset the rotation. Man, it would be nice to see Garrett Cole step up and win you a playoff game against the Rays in Yankee Stadium. You got to win one of the first two, but first you've got to get through that wild card game. So let's not count our chickens before they hatch. You know, I just recently watched Dan Work's video, and he was talking about how the Yankees have a shot at the World Series, and it's completely valid. They do have a shot at the World Series. But this team has been up and down all year, and you need them to be in a hot streak for that to happen. They went 35-11 at one point, and then they had that really, really cold streak after the 13-game win streak, and now they've won 6 straight. So if you can maintain that hot streak for another month, you've got a shot. But the Rays play the Yankees tough. The Jays play the Yankees tough. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I was chatting with one of the commenters on here, shout out to Shane Johnson, and we were talking about a Yankees shortstop prospect named Oswaldo Cabrera, who just recently got promoted to AAA from AA Somerset, having a really good year. He's a switch hitter. His swing reminds me of two different people, two different pretty good hitters, and I don't want to put this kind of pressure on somebody, but his follow-through reminds me a little bit of Larry Walker, and he's also got some hints of Carlos Beltran in there. Now, when you watch him swing, you notice he keeps both hands on the bat, completes his swing. He also hits with a closed front side. He closes that front foot off and accelerates his hips through the front side without overpowering that front foot. Much as like a golfer would when you drive the ball down the fairway, you keep that front foot closed, and that allows you to kind of use those hips to rotate without opening up on the front side. Now, he's kind of gotten lost in all of the hype of Anthony Volpe and Oswald Peraza, but Cabrera seems to be a pretty good player. He's got 27 home runs this year. As we mentioned, he's a switch hitter, ton of power, traditional lefty where he dominates that low and in pitch, as you're seeing right now on your screen. This is a guy who really could be an impact player for the Yankees, just 22 years old and obviously already at AAA. Would not surprise me if he's your starting shortstop next year. Now, he may not stick at shortstop. I think that Volpe and Peraza are both better prospects. But if Cabrera comes up and provides some energy and does a nice job, he's going to win over some fans. And seeing as how the Yankees infield has been kind of in flux this season, you know that they want to incorporate some young athletes into that infield. And with Cabrera, Peraza, Volpe, and possibly Torres, who's still young, sticking around, he may end up getting traded, but he may end up sticking around at second base. The future's bright for the Yankees infield. All right, so I pulled this graphic last night, so apologies if there have been any changes to this overnight. But if the postseason started today, you've got some big matchups in here. One that I'm really excited about is the National League wildcard matchup, the red-hot St. Louis Cardinals against the Los Angeles Dodgers. I mean, that's going to be a great game. You've got a red-hot team against the defending world champions who have just reloaded with one of the best trade deadline moves of all time, getting Max Scherzer and Trey Turner. Winner of that game will take on the San Francisco Giants. They lost Brandon Belt last night, fractured thumb. That could impact them going forward. The Brewers and the Braves should also be a pretty good series. Those two teams, seems like anytime I've watched those two teams play each other, they've played pretty tough. And the Braves obviously without Acuna Jr., so I'm going to take the Milwaukee Brewers in that series. Over in the American League, out west, you've got the Astros and the White Sox. Look, I know that the Astros have had a ton of postseason success in recent years, but I think the White Sox are winning that series. I just don't see the pitching on the Astros side compared to the White Sox with Lance Lynn and Carlos Rodon. I'll take both of those guys over anybody the Astros got. Now, the Astros do have a good offense. The X factors are their ballpark where they do a lot of damage, but I'm still taking the White Sox there. And then obviously the one that we're all looking at, Yankees, Red Sox possibly in the wild card. Winner takes on Tampa. I think the Yankees can get by Tampa, but it's essential that if you win that first game against the Red Sox, that you have to win one of the first 2 games in Tampa. And I know we're all going to panic if the Yankees beat the Red Sox and then lose the first game in Tampa. But as long as you take one of those first 2 games, you regain home field advantage. And then all bets are off, because that puts back into play the chance of Garrett Cole shutting down the Rays in Yankee Stadium to advance you to an ALCS. I honestly think the Yankees could beat the White Sox. They've handled the White Sox this year. I think they've won 5 out of 6 against the White Sox. Astros, they've also handled pretty well, but I think that's the matchup we all want to see. I love October baseball. I'll see you guys after the game.